How's it going, everyone? So before we get into today's topic, I just want to say that this gameplay discussion will probably be the last one you're going to see, at least for quite some time. You know, it's become increasingly difficult for me to actually create topics for these types of videos, and I actually have a playlist of all the gameplay discussions that I did, and there's well over 50 videos in that playlist, you know, and I don't want to sit here and sort of just talk about current events. I want to talk about things I'm actually passionate about discussing and stuff that actually makes sense. And when I'm sort of, you know, sitting here kind of forcing myself to be in a situation where, you know, I have to come up with a topic and make sure I get a video out on time for a schedule that I've set for myself, the content just suffers as a result. And so rather than kind of create, you know, very subpar gameplay discussions that, you know, doesn't really interest me and probably won't interest you because I'm not interested in it, I'd rather just, you know, make these on a sort of special case basis where I'm actually, you know, want to talk about the stuff I want to talk about, and it makes sense for me to discuss the topics that you know, that I may want to discuss, and kind of move on from there. So anyway, for this last video though, I wanted to discuss basically the change in playstyle that I've noticed I have partaken in when it comes to me playing any sort of modern game today. You know, even when I look back at sort of like 10 years from now, let's say like the end of the 7th generation, getting into the 8th generation, my approach to playing video games has changed dramatically. I'm not talking about my schedule and, you know, how busy I am with life and how I just don't have as much time. I'm talking about my actual play style, right? How I actually play the video game has changed dramatically. I think before, when you know, I was growing up and I was graduating high school, getting into college, my mindset was to just sort of get through things as soon as possible, and you know, I sort of played things at a rather quick state. It would be actually fairly normal for me to play a game and complete it in like a weekend, you know, and rarely would it ever take me more than like a month to get through a game. And I found that, you know, especially these days, that it's extremely rare, you know, if ever, that I actually complete a game in a single weekend. More often than not, it'll take me a week or two to actually get through a relatively, you know, 8 to 10 hour average experience. Like, I just beat Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. I believe my playthrough was somewhere around the realm of 12 to 15 hours, something in there. It took me about 2 weeks to get through that game, and I loved it, right? I absolutely loved the game, but again, my play style and the way that I actually play the game is at a significantly slower pace than I ever did before. You know, when I played the reboot of Ratchet and Clank, you know, I think it took me about a week or so to actually get through that game. I don't think it took me, you know, too quick, but you know, these are games where, you know, yeah, if a campaign was like 8 to 10 hours, I would just be like, just do the story, get through it in a weekend. Okay, that's done. On to the next thing. And, you know, I think that overall, you know, it's resulted in me appreciating games a lot more than I did back then, and you know, just really enjoying the games a lot more. But I sort of wanted to get the input from you guys watching this video. You know, do you guys notice the same thing has happened with you maybe at some point in your lives? You know, I think for the younger audience watching this, you may not be aware of that. You know, sure, you know, when you're playing a game as a kid, you don't particularly play for an objective, right? Because when you're young, you're just looking to have fun, right? You just play a video game and you just sort of, you know, there's no like objective or goal in your mindset to actually see the game all the way through. And then sort of when you get into your teenage years and you start to understand sort of the thematic approaches to storytelling and content and all that stuff, you sort of play video games maybe for different reasons. I know some people who, you know, play games and they enjoy it, and a lot of it is for sort of the competitive fun state. That storytelling isn't so much their thing, but there is a clear objective. They're aware for it, and they do actually play a game with the intention to actually see it all the way through. Although, you know, depending on the length and how much the game asks you to invest yourself, you know, you may or may not actually reach the end there. I think there's going to be another turning point for me, because the way that I actually play games now is because I'm a very organized person, and that's just the way that my mind works, right? I always put myself on a schedule. I always do things in a particular order. I'm the type of guy who's extremely analytical. I'll write down literally a list of everything I want to accomplish in a given week, and I make sure that I get all of that stuff done, or at least the vast majority of it done throughout the week. Some of these are sort of remedial, pointless tasks. Other things are a little bit more responsible and stuff that I just do for myself to sort of keep myself I guess feeling accomplished. But I also apply this same mindset to the way that I play video games, and that's what's enabled me, in all honesty, to get through a lot of these games. That's why I spent 60 hours in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, even though, honestly, I didn't particularly think it was phenomenal. I mean, most of it was just time-wasting content. The story did sort of pay off towards the end, though, but honestly, a more forgettable Assassin's Creed experience, and I much enjoyed the previous entry in the series, Odyssey, much more than actually Valhalla, despite me spending the same amount of time with it. And even something like Returnal, which is the game that you guys are seeing as the backdrop for this video. I love this game. This game in particular is probably the best game this generation for me, like so far. It is my current Game of the Year pick. I absolutely love this game. In particular, its storytelling is just, it's one of those games that leaves it up to interpretation, right? But if you use your imagination, and the sort of ending and the reason and all the logic behind the game's narrative that I decided on myself, what makes sense for me as a player experiencing this, I just love this game. It's just phenomenal, and it's just awesome. But on top of that, the gameplay is extremely rewarding, extremely fast-paced, and requires you to be strategic. You play it like you play Doom. You're always sort of on the move. You're looking for, different platforms and ledges to climb up with, and you have to make sure you take out certain enemies first, lest you have a harder challenge. It's got a really quick gameplay pace to it. However, and it might be a little bit contradictory to show this gameplay to you as I'm actually telling you this, but this gameplay that you guys are seeing is literally me exploring the levels in the third act of the game. So I've seen everything that you guys are actually seeing right now, and in my own time actually explored these levels and played them all the way through like I'm about to describe. But during the last segment of the game, they basically require you to go back through all the levels and collect a certain object to proceed and get the true ending of it. All right, but I found myself in this game, even though it's a really quick gameplay loop, I actually took my time and walked around the levels, purposely walking around the levels and stuff, and really kind of placed myself in the character's footsteps to really immerse myself in just this strange and hostile alien planet. It really drew me in. And this world isn't particularly, original or anything like that. It takes cues from a bunch of different sci-fi films and books and just the whole entire genre. It's basically an homage to alien fiction and extraterrestrial conspiracies. It's a very, very interesting world that it's like right up my alley, right? And so for me, I really played this game at a much slower pace than I think kind of the developers were intending. Of course, when you got to a combat segment, I was like, all right, I gotta move, I gotta get up on ledges, I gotta take out these enemies as quickly as possible, and I gotta make sure that there's cover and that there's different places I can zip to, and I gotta survive, gotta make sure I find the correct power-ups and items and things like that. I played with sort of that mindset, which is really about urgency and getting through these really tough challenges. But during the slower moments, when you finally get through the enemies and you're just kind of left with the world and the silence and just all the stuff around you, I found myself really just sort of taking it in, soaking it in, and just kind of walking around. And even though Returnal is a modern gem, I think the moment that I had this realization that I had this distinct change in playstyle was me going back to older games. You guys are seeing me sort of revisit some of the launch titles on Xbox 360, and there's more videos for that to come. But me revisiting those games and finding myself in the way I play these games completely different to how I remembered playing them from before. You know, Call of Duty 2 is not a particularly long game, although it is longer than, let's say, your modern typical Call of Duty campaigns. However, that is still a game that I could have beaten in a weekend if it was back during the release date and I was that age again. You know, the first Call of Duty I played was Call of Duty 3, and I didn't really like that game, but Call of Duty 4 was like the first campaign that I played all the way through during release, and I beat it in a weekend. It was, you know, and that game isn't particularly short by any means, I would say. You know, it's sort of your standard 6 to 8 hour length, let's just say, for a campaign. But I sort of remember the abruptness to the way that I sort of approached that game, and it's going to be interesting. I don't know if I plan to actually go back and play that one, but, you know, other ones like Call of Duty World at War, which I do actually want to revisit. That's another one that I played and beat in a weekend and actually reviewed for you guys on this YouTube channel as well. So I think that it's a contributing factor that I'm older now, so maybe in a way, as weird as this may seem, because I'm still a very young person, right? The reflexes that I have, but I think it's the amount of patience and also the reason, which is the core behind why it takes me longer to get through some of these experiences, even though the games in particular aren't really that long. You know, of course, we've seen such a rise in sort of open world designs, and I've talked about this in length, how a lot of games have gone open world now, and it's all about filling you with content, and the investment that a lot of games require is so great that it becomes a whole new task in of itself to actually see any of these games a way through. And I'm actually really interested to hear, you know, for the audience that is sort of teenagers today. I don't know if I have anyone watching this video who falls in that age group, right? But I want to know, you know, how long would it take those people to get through these games? And what is their mindset on video game length? One of the things I remember back then was that games were too short. We got often 6 to 8 hour campaigns, sometimes even 4 hour single player campaigns, and basically a decent sized length game back during, I'm talking about like the beginning of like 7th gen, let's just say, right? At the end of the 6th generation. A decent length game was around 8 to 10 hours. If you got 8 to 10 hours, that's what we would consider normal, average, a decent length, right? And I remember it being a surprise, in fact, a joy and a celebration for games to take longer than like 15 hours back then. It was like, wow, that's over 15 hours. That's amazing, you know, because we were so used to getting these sort of more bite-sized experiences. The other side of the coin there was that these were actually digestible games. It didn't take you particularly long to get through them, and no matter what you're really kind of going through in your life, you know, you could actually see one of these things through in a matter of like a week, let's just say, even if you were a very busy person. So the investment wasn't as great as it is now. And while I do recognize that that's probably contributed to the length of time it takes me to play through these games, even games that do fall within that category today, like Resident Evil Village, I still got around 12 hours, you know, even though if I kind of rushed that and played it as if I was, let's say, a kid, you know, I probably would have beaten that game in around 8 hours or so. I probably would have slashed almost half of the amount of time that I actually spent playing that game today. And I found myself in Resident Evil Village walking through the villages, even going back to visit other parts. I don't find myself really sprinting through areas unless I'm just, you know, again, I've been down this hallway like a dozen times. Okay, I just need to get to my objective, you know. But I really find myself sort of, I don't know if in a sense it's role-playing. Maybe it's just, you know, being in that space, right? You know, the sense of presence in that world that's become so strong for me and something that I really seek after. Maybe that's the core reason why I play games at a much slower pace. So my play style is different, and I just sort of wanted to get the input from everyone watching this video, if possible. You know, have you guys noticed, let's just say, in like the past 10 years, I think if you're older, you'll probably have a better idea of what I'm talking about if you're younger. You know, because if you're a teenager actually watching this video, you probably find yourself more engaged with the social aspects of the games and kind of seeing everything and really kind of engrossing yourself in basically everything the game has to offer. And while I'm very much the same way, at least when it comes to the single player content, right, I'll play games and I'll very often seek out to do the side missions. I'll make sure that, you know, I'll find collectibles and stuff. But I feel like if I did the same thing when I was younger, like, yeah, I would have probably played in a much more quicker fashion, sprinting through the levels, kind of getting, you know, through everything, not taking my time to really upgrade the weapons, and really maybe done a side mission or two, depending, and just kind of like, you know, worked myself through the game. But anyhow, yeah, really interested to hear what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching this video, and just in return, thank you guys so much for watching the gameplay discussions to begin with. You know, I sort of did these videos as sort of a temporary measure of, you know, me sort of being behind with games on my backlog and stuff, and me finding a way to sort of get gameplay back on this channel. And while there's some cool stuff that I really, you know, enjoy talking about and things like that, I just feel like it would be better just pace myself. And again, to really discuss stuff that I am passionate about discussing, because that makes just for a better video in of itself, you know, if you actually can understand and hear the emotion behind the things that I'm saying. So I'll find something else to sort of, you know, put up on the channel in the meantime. Again, I do need to actually have a discussion with you all about just sort of my mindset and where I'm feeling right now. That's probably going to come in the fall content update video, which I have planned for like the next week or two. So when you guys see that video, I'll probably have a greater in-depth discussion of sort of the stuff that I'm alluding to right now in this one. But either way, again, thank you guys so much for watching and just being interested. I appreciate it, and I will talk with you all at some point later. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.